Her savings app showed $282,000. She pulled down to refresh, and the number came back 500. That is not a glitch. That is Kayla Morris, a school teacher from Texas, watching the money from her family's house disappear into a screen. According to CNBC, she was one of more than 100,000 Americans locked out of $265 million overnight. No bank was robbed, no hacker broke in, no market crashed. The money vanished inside the machine that was built to keep it safe. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Almost 2 years later, tens of millions of it are still unaccounted for. This is the story of Synapse, how a company you never heard of ended up holding your neighbor's paycheck, how the 4 most trusted letters in American money turned out to mean nothing, and how $96 million can simply stop existing. To understand how money vanishes, you need to meet the machine. In 2014, a young engineer named Sanket Pathak founded a company in San Francisco called Synapse. The idea was genuinely brilliant. Banks were old, apps were new. Synapse would be the bridge between them. Any startup could plug into Synapse and offer bank accounts, debit cards, like savings, without ever becoming a bank. They called it banking as a service. And for a startup, it was magic. Building a real bank takes years, licenses, regulators, capital. Plugging into Synapse took weeks. The apps got the glory, the banks got the deposits, and Synapse took a quiet cut of everything in between. Silicon Valley loved it. Andreessen Horowitz, one of the most powerful investors on earth, led a $33 million round. Soon, Synapse sat underneath dozens of financial apps, a crypto app called Juno, a savings app called Yotta, even Copper, a banking app built for teenagers. Millions of Americans were using Synapse every single day, and almost none of them had ever heard its name. Remember that, because when the machine breaks, you cannot call a company you don't know exists. One of those apps was called Yotta, and Yotta had a hook of its own, a savings account. That worked like a lottery. It was founded in 2019 by a young entrepreneur named Adam Moelis, inspired by a British idea called premium bonds. Every $25 you saved bought you a ticket. Every week, prize draws, save more, win more. For a generation that hated banks, that felt like a game. It went viral. Podcasts, finance influencers, millions of dollars in prizes, and right there on the screen, it sat the 4 most trusted letters in American money. FDIC, insured up to $250,000. The promise that has meant your money is safe since the Great Depression. So people move their savings in emergency funds, wedding funds, house money. According to CNBC, 85,000 Yotta customers, $112 million, all of it flowing through a company they had never heard of, into banks they had never chosen. Here's how the machine actually works. You sent your money to Yotta, Yotta passed it to Synapse, and Synapse spread it across 4 partner banks, real vaults, really insured, but there was one catch. The banks did not know who you were. Your money arrived in giant pooled accounts labeled for benefit of millions of dollars, thousands of strangers, all mixed together. Think of it like a hotel safe. You hand your valuables to the front desk. The desk locks them in a giant vault with everyone else's. The vault is real, the steel is real, but the only list of what belongs to whom is a notebook in the manager's pocket. That notebook was Synapse's ledger. One database standing between 100,000 families and their life savings. As long as everyone trusted the manager, the machine worked perfectly. And then the trust ran out. Behind the beautiful apps, a war was starting. Synapse and its biggest partner bank, Evolve Bank and Trust, began fighting over the only thing that mattered, the numbers, whose ledger was correct, who owed fees to whom, where exactly the money was sitting. The dispute had been building for years, millions in contested fees, reconciliation reports that refused to agree. Fortune magazine would later call it, quote, the ugliest divorce in Fintech. end quote. And while they fought, the business was bleeding. Mercury, Synapse's biggest client, walked away and took its revenue with it. Deep layoffs followed in late 2023. The bridge was cracking, and while 100,000 people were still standing on it. Then, on April 22nd, 2024, Synapse filed for bankruptcy. A rescue deal appeared. A company called Taba Pay would buy the pieces. Within days, the rescue collapsed. It should have been a quiet corporate funeral. Instead, someone turned off the lights with 100,000 people still inside. May 11th, 2024, in the middle of the divorce, access to Synapse's systems shut down, and without the ledger, the banks could not tell whose money was whose. So they did the safest thing for themselves. They froze everything across America. People opened their apps and found a screen that would not move. We're experiencing technical difficulties. Day 1, they believed it. Day 7, they panicked. Day 30, they understood. More than 100,000 people, $265 million frozen, rent money, surgery money, college money, teenagers with copper account, locked out of their first savings. As reporters later documented, weddings were postponed, medical decisions delayed, lives put on hold. By July, a group of United States senators was publicly demanding that the companies give people their money back, but there was no branch to walk into, no human to shout at, just a spinning wheel. And in group chats across the country, tens of thousands of strangers found each other by comparing frozen balances and slowly realizing the same thing. This was not a glitch. This was the system working exactly as it was built. But wait, the badge, FDIC insured. This is exactly what insurance is for, right? Here is the sentence that broke 100,000 hearts. FDIC insurance pays out when a bank fails, and no bank failed. Evolve was fine. The other partner banks were fine. The company that collapsed, Synapse, was never a bank at all. It was middleware, software, and software is not insured, and here is the cruelest detail of all. There is such a thing as pass-through insurance. If a partner bank had failed, customers could have been covered, and as long as the ownership records were clear. The records, the one thing that was broken, they weren't protected from this disaster because the disaster ate the paperwork too. Regulators now call this the Fintech gap. 100,000 people had fallen straight through it. Then the story started reaching the news. Kayla Morris, a former school teacher from Texas, she and her husband sold their house and placed the money in Yotta while they searched for a new home. $282,153. When the partial payouts finally began, CNBC reported what she was told the bank would return. $500. Others got less. Some customers were offered back 75 cents on $15,000 of deposits. By the end of 2024, nearly 14,000 Yotta customers had been offered less than $12 million, would go on almost $65 million in deposits. For some, the payouts came out nearly whole. For thousands of others, fractions of fractions. These were not investors. They never bought a stock. They never touched crypto. They put savings in a savings account, and the account swallowed them. So where did the money go? The court appointed a trustee to find out, and not just anyone. Jelena McWilliams, the former chairman of the FDIC itself. If anyone on earth could follow this money, it was her. Her job, untangle 4 banks, dozens of apps, and millions of transactions using a dead company's database. And within weeks, she told the court something nobody wanted to hear. The records were not just messy. They disagreed with each other about tens of millions of dollars. What she found was stranger than theft. The bank's records said one thing. Synapse's ledger said another. At one point, according to CNBC, the banks were holding $109 million for Yotta's customers. About a month later, the records showed 1.4 million week after week. She filed reports to the court week after week. The numbers refused to match. The trustee reported a shortfall of between 65 and $96 million. Not proven stolen, not found either, just unaccounted for. 4 banks, 1 dead company, and a 9-figure question mark with people's lives inside it. And then the search itself ran out of money. The bankruptcy estate was so broke, the trustee could not afford a full forensic investigation. The judge admitted the court had almost no power to make the victims whole. And in 2025, the case was thrown out entirely. Think about that. The investigation into the missing millions could not pay its own bills. Meanwhile, everyone pointed at everyone. Synapse blamed Evolve. Evolve blamed Synapse. Yotta sued Evolve, alleging the bank had misplaced its customers' funds. Allegations Evolve denies. A fight still crawling through the courts. No charges, no verdicts, no answers, just a courtroom closing its doors, and the ledger that could settle everything belonged to a company that no longer existed. But this story is not over. Congress demanded answers, regulators opened files, and then, according to reports in 2025, federal prosecutors in New York convened a grand jury investigating potential accounting and wire fraud connected to the collapse. Allegations, not verdicts, but the machine is finally under oath. In late 2025, the government's consumer watchdog stepped in, allocating $46 million from its penalty fund to compensate Synapse's victims. Pennies on many dollars, but the first real money some families had seen in a year and a half. And the founder, according to multiple reports, while customers were still locked out of their savings, Sankat Pathak was already raising money for a new venture, a startup building humanoid robots. He has denied any wrongdoing, and no court has ruled against him. But sit with that picture for a moment. The savers lost their savings, and the man who built the machine got a new machine. Today, regulators have proposed new rules forcing banks to keep their own records of exactly who owns every fintech dollar. A rule written in the ink of 100,000 frozen accounts. The apps are still at the top of the app stores, sleeker than ever. So look at your phone, that savings app, that badge on the screen. Is your money in a bank? Or is it in a machine waiting for the one spreadsheet that knows your name? Somewhere tonight, someone is pulling down to refresh, trusting a number on a screen, because that is all a balance is in the end, a number that someone else promised to remember. 100,000 people found out the hard way. The apps were beautiful. The ledger was not. I'm Empire Decoded. The next empire is already being built.